For this video, I played every Samurai Warriors game. That's 15 games released over nearly 2 decades. I'm going to give a quick review on each of them and rank them at the end. If you don't know what Samurai Warriors is, it's a series of hack and slash games that take place in the Sengoku period of Japanese history. It's the sister series of the more popular Dynasty Warriors, also released by Koei Tecmo. This video will cover every Xtreme Legends, Empires, and portable Samurai Warriors game released in English with the exception of any tactical or strategy spin-off titles. Some games in the series have been re-released, and I won't be covering a single game multiple times. I am aware that there are a lot of Japanese-only Samurai Warriors releases, and while I won't be covering them today, I have considered compiling all the Japanese-only Warriors games into a different single video. One huge mistake that I made in my Dynasty Warriors video was not mentioning the music of Warriors games. These games have amazing soundtracks that add more to the experience than you may expect. Throughout the video, you'll hear music from the respective game that I'm talking about, and I'll mention the music more this time around. Before we get started, I also wanted to thank everyone for the support you've shown me on the channel so far. I never expected my Dynasty Warriors video to get anywhere close to 100,000 views, so I really appreciate it. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Now let's get started with the first game in the series, 2004's Samurai Warriors. I never played the first Samurai Warriors game before this video, so I had no idea what to expect. But this game kinda blew me away. First of all, it is packed with content as far as Warriors games go. There are 5 modes to choose from, excluding free mode, and we're gonna take a look at them one by one. This game has so much stuff in it that I really could make an entire video just about this game alone. That's more than I can say for a lot of Warriors titles. Our first mode is Musou mode. You only have a limited amount of characters to choose from at first, but you unlock other characters by finishing Musou modes. Most characters' Musou modes have a branching path in them, and the path you take is determined by what objectives you complete in battle. Characters with a branching path can have multiple endings to their story. For my Musou mode with Sanada Yukimura, I ended up going on the upper path, which leads to the more historical story and ending. Now, Musou modes and the battles within aren't that long, which I personally don't mind as there are 16 characters to get through. It took me a little over an hour to complete Yukimura's Musou mode, which felt like the perfect length. Now, this time was helped by the fact that I didn't die or fail a single battle as Yukimura. The Musou mode difficulty was fairly easy throughout. I felt that the health and aggression of officers and peons was balanced well, and the only time I really felt I was in danger was taking on multiple officers at once, and when fighting special peons. In Samurai Warriors 1, there are a number of special enemies, usually some type of ninja, that attack you in different ways than standard enemies. They can be really tough and there's a lot of variety with them. While not too terrible in Musou mode, they pop up in other game modes more frequently to wreck your health bar. Overall, I thought Musou mode was done very well. Bonus points goes to the game giving you alternate outfits for beating Musou mode, like this sick alternate Yukimura armor, and for having a neat little RPG-like mechanic where you can give your character certain buffs. I always like that in Warriors games. Next up is free officer mode, where my only criticism of the game really comes from. In this mode, you get to quote-unquote create a character. In reality, you simply choose from a few presets and name your character. Once your character is done, you're put into training to become a samurai. Training consists of various challenges that will affect your stats. Once your training is over, you choose a clan to serve and your character gets their own Musou mode and can be used in other modes. Unfortunately, the clan you choose doesn't influence your Musou mode. Now, what's my problem with this mode? I think it's a really cool concept, but the execution is just a bit flawed. In order to save your custom character to be used in other modes, you have to complete the training mode. This means if you fail, or have to leave the game, you must start from the very beginning of the training all over again. While the training mode isn't that long, consisting of roughly 15 short training missions, Not being able to save and continue at least seems like a major oversight. Dynasty Warriors 5 Xtreme Legends did this much better by allowing you to either create a character through Destiny mode, or just create a character as a standalone character. The rest of the modes are pretty simple. We have Survival, Versus, and Challenge mode. Survival mode has two modes within, Tower and Abyss. They are both timed challenges to get through each floor of a castle as soon as possible. They were fine, but I don't really enjoy timed challenges too much in Warriors games. Versus mode can be played against the computer or another player. It has three modes within. Two are pretty simple, defeat your opponent's army first, or reaching 1000 KOs first. The third one is a little more interesting, where you have to catch Goemon before your opponent. Our final mode is Challenge mode. There's a lot of different game modes within, but they're all pretty standard for early Warriors games. There was one that stood out, which was Deflect. You have to defeat enemies by deflecting their arrows back at them. I thought this was a really unique challenge, and it was pretty tough to get the timing right. Samurai Warriors 1 was a fantastic game, and a great way to start this series. I highly recommend it to fans of classic Warriors games, and I'll certainly be coming back to finish this one. Samurai Warriors Xtreme Legends released in 2004 and is a spin-off of the first Samurai Warriors game that functions kind of like an expansion. If you're out of the loop, the point of Xtreme Legends, or XL, was to add more content to the original game. It could work as a standalone disc, but the point was really to have the original disc and the XL disc, and the two games would combine into one. Before we move on to XL's original content, it's important to note that XL will update the original game's Musou modes. For example, Honda Tadakatsu was a generic officer in Yukimuro's Musou mode, but if you play Musou mode with the XL data, Tadakatsu will now be his actual Xtreme Legends character. There's a lot of little neat updates like that when you do combine the two discs. On its own, XL has a decent amount of content. It adds 4 new characters and their Musou modes, new items, weapons, an archive section explaining the history of the time period, and a few new game modes for Versus and Survival mode. Versus mode got Duel, Sumo, and Gatekeeper. Duel is a simple one-on-one fight. Sumo is an interesting game where you play as a sumo peon and try to knock enemies out of the ring. Gatekeeper is a somewhat hectic game mode where you're trying to defend your gate while sending enemies to your opponent's gate. Survival mode got Gold Rush, where you just run around and collect gold while dodging traps and enemies. That's really all there is to say about Xtreme Legends. It's a nice expansion to Samurai Warriors 1, and it does help the game feel finished, but that's about it. Samurai Warriors State of War released in 2006 and is both the first portable Samurai Warriors game and the last game based on the original Samurai Warriors. If you've seen my Dynasty Warriors video, this game probably looks similar to the Dynasty Warriors PSP games because it's essentially the same thing. Instead of battles taking place on one big map, battles are cut into 2 phases. The first phase is where you traverse through the map and attack these tiles, and then attacking the tiles throws you into a mini battle which you have to complete to progress. Now, I understand that State of War is a PSP game and there are obvious hardware limitations there, but this game just felt really bare bones. The only game mode here is Musou mode for every character, though characters do share stages between them, so you'll be playing plenty of repeats here. Now, let's talk about what the game does well. The gameplay of Samurai Warriors 1 is faithfully adapted into this game. State of War also includes most, if not all, of the special peons found in Samurai Warriors 1. You can also have officers as bodyguards in this game, and they use their portraits from Koei's strategy game series, Nobunaga's Ambition, which is an awesome touch that gives these generics a bit more uniqueness. There's also a tiny bit of voice acting in the game during combat, which was nice to see. Now, on to the problems of the game. I'm going to be comparing this game to the Dynasty Warriors PSP games, which may or may not be fair, but seeing as they are all essentially the same game and came out right around the same time, I can't help myself here. While you do have bodyguards in this game, they don't really do anything to help. They aren't very aggressive, and they don't even have special skills like the ones you can activate in the Dynasty Warriors PSP games. Another feature Dynasty Warriors had that this game does not is a dynamic battle going on around you. In Dynasty Warriors, your enemies and allies would traverse the map and fight each other while you were in battle. It made it feel like a real war was going on. State of War feels so much more like just going through the motions. Enemies and allies are mostly static even during the strategy phase. The draw distance in this game is horrible. Enemies right in front of you will sometimes fade out of view, and good luck seeing anything behind you. This was especially frustrating playing as Saika Magoichi, because one or two hits from his Musou attack would knock enemies out of your view. There's not much else to say about State of War. This is definitely the worst of the Warriors PSP games I've played, and I really have no desire to come back and finish this game. Samurai Warriors 2 also released in 2006 and is highly regarded by the Warriors fanbase. I played a battle or two in this game when I was younger, but this will be my first time really diving into it. The first thing I noticed with 2 is the lack of game modes compared to the first game. This time we only have Story Mode, Free Mode, Survival Mode, and Sugoroku. 2 added 10 playable characters and removed 3 of them, bringing 2's total playable roster to 26 characters. Only a handful of them are available at the beginning of the game, but as you clear different story modes, more characters will unlock and their story modes will become playable. Jumping into the game, there were some slight but definitely impactful changes brought to 2's gameplay. You can now freely move the camera around your character, which is nice. Each character now has a couple special moves that vary between each of them. I thought these were a great addition to the game as they just give you a wider variety of attacks to use. I also welcome them because, to my surprise, I think Samurai Warriors 2 actually ramped up the difficulty compared to the first game. Not by much, but I at least had some scary moments in 2. The main difference in difficulty that I noticed is that when officers hit you, they really hit your health bar hard. The peons though seemed like less of a problem than in the first game. There's also a new equipable skill system in the game that's similar, but different to what the first game had. I also really enjoyed playing as the ninjas as they have a high jumping ability that changes some of the stages and objectives that you do. Story mode is mostly the same affair as before. You have a handful of stages with each character. Gone are the branching paths though, and instead each character has a dream stage at the end of their story mode, which is just an extra, usually non-historical stage. There's also now a shop to help buff up your characters and also purchase bodyguards and horses. Next is survival mode, which has now been condensed into just one game mode. The floors you traverse in survival mode are now broken up into different missions, which I thought was a good change. It definitely helped to keep me a little more invested in survival mode than the first game. The mission that I played only had me defeating officers and then groups of peons, but there are a variety of other missions you can find throughout survival mode. One part of survival mode that I did not like is that while you can save and quit survival mode, you cannot play any other mode in the game without deleting or going back and finishing your current survival mode run. I don't know why that's even a mechanic, considering that games like Dynasty Warriors 4 and 5XL have the similar extreme mode that allows you to save, quit, and play other game modes. The last mode of the game is Sugoroku, which plays kind of like a Samurai Warriors Monopoly Mario Party crossover game. You play on a board in the shape of Japan, roll dice to move, occasionally play mini-games, all with the goal of amassing a target wealth that you can set at the beginning of the game. I was really shocked to see a game mode like Sugoroku, because I've never quite seen anything like it in a Warriors game. Playing against the CPU wasn't all that engaging, but I could see this being pretty fun with a few friends. I also wanted to discuss the music of 2 briefly. The music in Samurai Warriors 1 was a mix of traditional Japanese instruments and synth, which worked out really well. For 2, the music leans way more heavily on the Japanese instruments. That's fine of course, but it made some of 2's music sound a little empty, I guess. If you're interested in hearing it for yourself, I'll link some videos of the soundtrack comparison in the description. Samurai Warriors 2 is a very good game with some great gameplay. Would I call it the best Samurai Warriors game like some do? I don't think so. While playing this game, the thought of Samurai Warriors 1 having so many more game modes kept popping up in my head, even if 2 overall may have more content. That being said, this game also gets a big recommendation from me, and I'll surely be coming back to finish this game as well. Anyone who watched my Dynasty Warriors video probably knows how much I like the Empire spin-off games, so I was very excited to check out 2007's Samurai Warriors 2 Empires for the first time. If you aren't familiar with Empires, it's the strategy spin-off of the normal Warriors games. In Samurai Warriors specifically, you're given a faction to manage while you try to conquer either a specific region of Japan or the entire nation. Empires games are typically broken down into a political phase where you'll work to improve your faction, and the battle phase where you'll fight typical Warriors battles with some extra strategic elements thrown in. Before we talk about Empires mode, the game has a basic character creation mode. It's better than the character creation in Samurai Warriors 1, but it's nothing special either. Now, onto Empires mode. I think it's really fun. The game suggested a scenario for me to play, so I chose that one and played as Kenshin. After a turn or two, I was thrown into a special event battle. These are historical battles that you can find throughout Empires given the right circumstances. This battle was, of course, Kenshin's famous battle with Shingen, Kawanakajima. This battle was both really easy and kinda difficult. Kawanakajima in Samurai Warriors 2 has this interesting mechanic where you can't see where anyone is located on the map, including yourself. One of the important parts of Empires games is ordering your officers around, telling them what bases are enemies to attack, and so on. That was obviously pretty difficult with the map being hidden. However, there are brief moments where the map does become visible, and that's when I hurried to get all my officer commands done. The actual combat in this battle was very easy, but finding my way around was tough. I won the battle and then proceeded to attack an obliterated Takeda clan and easily beat them. That was just my first 2 battles and 6 or so turns, and I was already having a great time. Another cool feature of 2 Empires are the character events. Certain characters, depending on if they're fighting each other in the same army and different circumstances, will have short little events between them. They're only text-based, but it's just another nice touch that the game has, and it's the little things that help Warriors games feel complete. This game also gets bonus points because it lets you choose how to improve your faction during the political phase, rather than just being stuck to your vassals' suggestions like a few other Warriors games. Overall, 2 Empires is another really good game, and definitely worth a few different playthroughs just to beat all the scenarios and see some of the character events. Unlike every other Warriors game, the Xtreme Legends version of Samurai Warriors 2 released after its Empires version in 2008. I don't know why they did this, but it sucks that Empires missed out on the new characters introduced in 2 Xtreme Legends. There's not really a whole lot to talk about with 2XL because it doesn't add very much. You get 6 new characters and their Musou modes, as well as a new Mercenary mode. When I first jumped into Mercenary mode, I had no idea what was going on. There was no text or tutorial explaining what the mode even was when I started it. Now, Mercenary mode is similar to Extreme mode found in the Dynasty Warriors series. You go through a series of random battles with a couple different objectives throughout them. You can recruit officers to join you and level up your own character. You can eventually beat Mercenary mode, much like Extreme mode too. I'm not sure why, but Mercenary mode felt pretty lackluster. There weren't a bunch of different things going on like Extreme mode battles. You can eventually join a faction in Mercenary mode, but it just doesn't feel as fun as Extreme modes taking over a territory and then choosing to be good or evil. 2XL overall is kind of lackluster too. I at least expected some kind of versus mode or a challenge mode, but there just wasn't. It kind of feels like they made this game just because every other Warriors game got an Xtreme Legends edition. This game is still good because it's based on Samurai Warriors 2, it just doesn't really add a lot on its own. So I didn't play this next game because it isn't really a Warriors game, but I at least wanted to mention it. Samurai Warriors Katana is a 2008 on-rails shooter for the Wii that takes place in the Samurai Warriors universe. This game honestly looks pretty bad to me. It looks like one of the many motion control WiiWare garbage that the Wii got during its run. I could be wrong, but that's just the impression I get. Let me know in the comments if you've played this game and how you feel about it. The one good thing about this game is that it did have some nice original music that comes back in other Warriors games. I won't be ranking this game, but now you know it exists. You're welcome? But Katana isn't the only Wii game we'll be taking a look at today, as Samurai Warriors 3 was a 2010 Wii exclusive title in North America, a decision that was kind of damaging for the Samurai Warriors series. But let's talk about the game first. Samurai Warriors 3 is not a great game. It's not horrible, but I just didn't find it fun to play at all. Before we even get into the game modes and stuff like that, my biggest problem with this game is just how sluggish everything feels. If you compare 3's gameplay speed to the speed in 1 or 2, the difference is night and day. It feels to me like 3 is playing at 75% of the speed that other Warriors games play at. That might not seem like a big deal, but it makes a world of a difference when you're playing the games. I'm not sure if it's the Wii that caused the slow gameplay or if it was a design choice, but either way it sucks. The silver lining of it, I guess, is that it does make the game a bit more difficult, as you can't mow down multiple officers at once as easily. Moving on to the game modes, this time we get Story Mode, Historical Mode, Free Mode, and Murasame Castle. Story Mode is your standard affair. Each character now only gets 5 battles for their Story Mode, 6 out of the 30 characters don't get Story Modes, and 4 characters were cut from 3 that were in 2XL. Historical Mode is nothing special either. It does involve another basic character creation, but at least this time a wide range of colors are available to use for your officer. In Historical Mode, you just take your created character and fight through some battles with them. The final mode of the game, Murasame Castle, is kind of interesting. First, some background on what this mode even is. Murasame Castle is actually a crossover with the 1986 Famicom game, The Mysterious Murasame Castle, that didn't get a US release until 2014, which is years after Samurai Warriors 3 released. Now, I'm not an expert on Japanese games, but I can't imagine this was very relevant, if at all, when 3 came out. The mode itself is kind of fun though. You choose a character and start in a little hub world. From here, you'll fight through some battles with different objectives and gameplay mechanics. It's nothing crazy, but one of the better things 3 has going for it. If I were to ever come back to 3, it would probably be to finish Murasame Castle. 3 was my first Samurai Warriors game as a kid, and I did enjoy it back then. It was really disappointing to come back to it and realize that this might be the worst game that I've played so far in this video. At least the PSP game had one's combat going for it. 3 is just not a game that I likely see myself coming back to, or that I can recommend. Samurai Warriors Chronicles released in 2011 for the 3DS. To be completely honest, I went into this game without much hope. Other Warriors portable games already aren't very good, and with this being based on Samurai Warriors 3, I really didn't think it would be great. I was kinda wrong though. Although Chronicles has some issues, it was actually pretty fun. For starters, the combat feels way better than 3. The game speed actually feels correct this time around, and I don't feel like I'm fighting in quicksand. Chronicles also introduced what I think may be the best feature that has ever been in Warriors games. The ability to switch between multiple characters around the battlefield in each stage. And even better, for the characters you aren't controlling at any point in time, you can order them where to go and what to do on the battlefield. Even if it's not much, being able to switch and order characters around adds a light strategic element to the game that I really enjoy. Some other cool features in the game include a friendship system with other characters, and a few branching paths in your created character's story. The game isn't perfect though, and does have its problems. The worst thing about Chronicles is the difficulty. Now before I go into difficulty, I want to acknowledge that I do play every Warriors game on normal difficulty for the purposes of reviewing it. Each game has lower and higher difficulties, and I'm fully aware of that. I just want to be fair and judge each game based on its recommended base difficulty. With that out of the way, this game is incredibly easy. I assume, or at least hope, that the game's difficulty rises as you play, but the first handful of battles are insultingly easy. You can stand next to enemies and they won't even turn in your direction. Officers will usually wait for you to hit them before they even attempt to move or attack you. I read an interview stating that this game was targeting newcomers to the Warrior series, and it really shows with the difficulty. This is a minor issue as well, but you can no longer manually control the camera either. One last thing to note is that this is the first Samurai Warriors game not to have an English dub. As far as I know, Samurai Warriors 3 was the last Warriors game to have any English voice acting, and I assume that'll hold true for the rest of the Samurai Warriors lifespan. So Chronicles is kind of a mixed bag overall. It did some great things for the Samurai Warriors series with the mechanics it introduced, and between the other portable Warriors games that I've played on my channel, this is definitely the best one so far. It's a fun enough game to play for a little while, but I'm not sure it could hold my attention for a full playthrough. Now after Samurai Warriors 3 and Chronicles, a handful of Japan-only Samurai Warriors games released, including a 3 Empires and a sequel to Chronicles. Now I can't say this for certain, but I assume these games never came to North America because 3 was a commercial failure here. And 3 was almost certainly a commercial failure because it was a Wii exclusive. I'm not sure why Koei thought making 3 Wii exclusive was a good idea at all, when almost every other Warriors game prior had only been released on PlayStation and Xbox consoles. As I mentioned earlier, someday I'm going to make a video where I play all these Japan-only titles in a single video. The only reason I don't include Japan-only titles in these ranking videos is because I don't think I can fairly rank them when I can't even understand the language of the game. Thankfully, Samurai Warriors would return to form with 4 releasing in North America on PlayStation consoles. But before we talk about 4, I want to mention another game I won't be ranking today but is fun to look at. As part of this weird Koei Nintendo deal, Samurai Warriors got a 2012 crossover with Pokemon called Pokemon Conquest. This game plays neither like Pokemon or Samurai Warriors, but it features characters from both franchises. This is a game though that I can tell you for sure I'll be making a video on eventually. Samurai Warriors 4 released in 2014 and really brought Samurai Warriors into the modern era of Warriors games. 4 is basically the definitive version of Samurai Warriors, much like Dynasty Warriors 8 is to Dynasty Warriors. 4 has a huge cast of 55 characters, all with unique, updated movesets. Each character that has ever been playable in Samurai Warriors is here. I don't mention graphics too much in these videos because I don't think they're too important, but I just wanted to mention that I think 4 looks beautiful. It's very vibrant and colorful, and a lot of the special effects that come along with the combat are also really nice looking. I also have to talk about the music in this game. Like older Samurai Warriors games, it still has the synth influences and Japanese instruments, but 4 also has this great mix of musical genres in it. There's techno, rock, EDM, hip-hop, drum and bass, even dubstep, sometimes multiple of those in one track. As far as video game soundtracks go, it's one of the most dynamic I've ever heard, and I definitely recommend you give it a listen. 4 only has 2 modes, Story Mode and Chronicle Mode, but that doesn't mean that 4 has a lack of content at all. The Story Mode is pretty lengthy and gives you a fairly expansive view on the time period. A lot of the factions, both large and small, get their own story mode. While it is great that more characters get a chance to shine, depending on the faction you're playing, it can sometimes feel like padding. The Mori clan are a good example of this. For 4 stages, you play as the same characters, fight the same characters, and there's just little variation there to justify the Mori having their own story mode. A battle or maybe 2 would have sufficed. Speaking of padding, it does sometimes feel like battles themselves are padded out too. There are just a lot of instances of multiple officers suddenly appearing on the battlefield, and you have to go travel over and wipe them out. Yes, that's a normal Warriors thing, but it happened enough in this game to where I actively took note of it. That's just me nitpicking though. Overall the story mode is good, but I think the combat is where the game really shines. First of all, 4 brings back the character switching ability from Chronicles. You can only switch between 2 characters instead of 4, but that's not a big deal to me. What I really like about this system in 4 is that it gives you the opportunity to experience a wide variety of characters and their movesets without having to replay a lot of battles. When playing through a larger faction in this game, it's great to have the choice of going with the same characters every time that you enjoy using, or testing out new characters every battle. Between Dynasty and Samurai Warriors, this is my favorite way that they've managed a large playable cast. Both the new and updated movesets in 4 are fantastic. Some people complain that certain characters have had the same moveset since the first game, and that's kinda true, but not really, as each of these movesets have been upgraded to match with 4's improved gameplay. The big gameplay addition of 4 is the new Hyper Attack. These attacks are basically to help you traverse the map quicker and mow down peons at the same time. Some people really like Hyper Attacks, others say it takes away from the game. I'm really just neutral on them. I use them occasionally, but they aren't my favorite attacks to use. Now to get to Chronicles mode. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's 4's take on Chronicles. The friendship system returns, and this time you travel around on a hub world of Japan. You get to choose where to go and who to interact with. You play this mode with a created character, and you're able to unlock more armor options for your character throughout the mode. The character creation is getting better as the games go on, but it still isn't that good overall. 4 is a really good game that sometimes can feel a little bloated. Like I said before though, I would say it's the definitive version of Samurai Warriors, and I can't recommend it enough. This is a game that I have and will come back to many more times. After my experience with the first Chronicles game and Samurai Warriors 4, I was really excited to play 2015's Samurai Warriors Chronicles 3. I was not disappointed at all with this game. They did a great job porting over 4's gameplay onto the 3DS. As you would expect, Chronicles 3 plays a lot like the first Chronicles game, but with 4's updated gameplay mechanics. The standard Chronicles mode is back along with the challenge mode this time. Challenge mode, however, is not the same challenge mode you'd find in early Warriors games with the little mini-games. Instead, this challenge mode plays more like survival mode from the original Samurai Warriors game. Chronicles 3 does a few things better than the original as well. You can now manually control the camera, which is always nice. I also really enjoyed the story elements of this game. Characters were fleshed out more than they were even in Samurai Warriors 4. You got to see characters' actual personality, which wasn't always the case with 4. Nobunaga specifically is a character that I thought was portrayed much better in Chronicles 3 than Samurai Warriors 4. The difficulty in Chronicles 3 was better than the original as well, and Chronicles 3 has a handful of original music and hypothetical stages also. Chronicles 3 is really a fantastic game. Without a doubt, the best portable game I've reviewed on this channel. Despite this being a portable game, I highly recommend it, and I will be coming back to play more of it. Samurai Warriors 4-2 released in 2015 and is really just a small expansion for 4. There's not a lot to talk about here. 4-2 has some new scenarios that mostly reuse battlefields from the base game, survival mode makes a return, and a new character was added. Gameplay wise, 4-2 is good. I don't know if it adds enough to really warrant someone to go out of their way to play it though. I feel like base game 4 has a decent amount of content as it is. Samurai Warriors 4 Empires released in 2016, and at the time of this recording is the most recent Samurai Warriors Empires game. As with every Empires game, character creation is back and it's just fine. You can make some decently unique characters here. 4 Empires did introduce the ability to replace a generic historical character with your created character, which is always fun. If that isn't your thing though, many of the more important generics already have a pre-made created character that represents them in the game. This is a great feature because it adds a lot of the female characters into Empires, since there are no female generics in the normal games. Also, when creating a character, you can select for them to have relationships with a certain character already in the game. This is tied to the character switching in 4 Empires. Character switching is now dependent on whether the character you entered battle with has a relationship with other characters in your army. It's an interesting feature and allows you to potentially be able to switch between every officer in your entire army if you build your army correctly. Relationships between officers aren't just important in battle either, but in the political phase as well. Your political officials perform better when paired with officers they like or have some relation to. This focus on relationships feels very fitting for Samurai Warriors, given the emphasis on clans and bloodlines in the Sengoku era as a whole. Empires mode isn't much different from other games. You build up your faction to complete a few different goals. Your faction can focus on destroying another faction, conquering a region, or conquering Japan. Completing any of these goals can end the game, so you don't have to conquer the whole country to end the game, unlike in Dynasty Warriors. Event battles have returned as well. I started off as the Akechi clan in the 1582 scenario, and I was immediately thrown into Honnoji to slay Nobunaga. Battles in 4 Empires are pretty standard. There are some formations and strategies you can use to buff your army, but there isn't much else in terms of in-game strategy. The political phase has a couple new features, such as setting officials for certain positions, and building new castles that can provide certain benefits to your faction. There are also a number of cutscenes in the game that trigger based on certain circumstances. These are a nice addition, but certain cutscenes trigger a bit too often, like your retainers building a castle together. Those can get a bit annoying. 4 Empires is another really good game. It's a solid Empires game all around, and anyone interested in Empires should definitely check it out. I've already completed every scenario in this game, and I really enjoyed my time with it. Samurai Warriors Spirit of Sanada released in 2017 and is a bit of a different take on the standard Warriors formula. As the name implies, Spirit of Sanada heavily focuses on the poster boy, Sanada Yukimura, and the Sanada family. This game was created to coincide with a popular Japanese TV drama focusing on the same characters. From what I've heard from those that have played Spirit of Sanada, it's a fantastic game. The only problem is that barely anyone has played it. As far as I can tell, this game sold kind of poorly and a lot of Warriors fans skipped out on it. There's a lot of reasons why this could have happened, but I think I know the main reason. Spirit of Sanada, or SOS, was the 5th game released in the Samurai Warriors 4 family of games. That's 5 different games where the gameplay is essentially the same. That's not to say that the gameplay of 4 is bad, but between 5 different titles, there's going to be some burnout. That's not to mention extremely poor marketing in the West and, at least on the surface, focusing on a few characters in a game series famous for its many characters. With that out of the way, let's talk about the game itself. I really like it, and I like it because it feels like a Warriors game that we're used to, but it has unique aspects that help it stand out. There's a lot of new things to go over here. Much more than what you get with a standard spin-off title. First off, the entire structure of the story mode, the only mode in the game by the way, is very different than most other Warriors games. You have a hub world now in the form of castles that upgrade and change throughout the story mode. Here you have a number of facilities, side quests, and characters to talk to. We've seen similar kinds of hubs in the Dynasty Warriors series, and while I'm usually not a big fan of them, I don't mind it at all in this game. You're even encouraged by the game to interact with characters with direct benefits given to you. These include different stratagems that will help you in upcoming battles, a friendship system, and an encyclopedia system. Bonus points to the game as well for having younger and older versions of some characters. More Warriors games really need that. The actual battles in the game are a lot different as well. You now have a sort of semi-open world where you can choose where to go and what missions to do. There are side missions and then actual battles themselves. The battles are broken down into several smaller skirmishes, which helps make these conflicts feel like actual realistic battles now. There is also a day and night system during battles that will change your map visibility and a couple other factors. Now, if I had any problems with this game, it would be the map structure and the objective system. This is not a problem unique to Spirit of Sanada. Most of the games based on Samurai Warriors 4 do have these issues. The maps just felt very linear throughout, making the objective system feel pointless. The objective system constantly popping up and giving you new things to do as well kind of interrupts the flow of battles. The story of the game benefits by being ultra focused on a single family. You get a much deeper look into the characters, even generic officers, and their relationships with each other. It's really nice. One thing that felt a little jarring about the game was the voice acting. More specifically where there was and wasn't voice acting. The hub world and side quests had little to no voice acting, but there was voice acting during major battles and cutscenes. It just seemed a bit off, I guess. Overall, I think Spirit of Sanada was a great blueprint for how the future of Warriors games should have gone. If you take Spirit of Sanada, expand the story to include multiple factions, and tweak the map and objective system, you probably have the perfect Warriors game right there. Now, unfortunately, that didn't happen. Samurai Warriors 5 took a few things from Spirit of Sanada, but not what it should have taken. Spirit of Sanada is a great game that I highly recommend, and I can't wait to go back and finish it myself. I'm going to be upfront with you all. From the moment I saw the very first trailer for Samurai Warriors 5 in early 2021, I was against the game. As more information about the game was revealed, I became even more against it. I did not support Koei rebooting the series, cutting characters, cloning movesets, and only focusing on about half the time period that Samurai Warriors typically focuses on. So when the game released in mid-2021, I skipped it. I didn't buy it and haven't played it until now. I'm telling you this just for context and transparency. I dedicate myself to being as unbiased as possible and go into each game with as blank of a state as I can. With that being said, I did not purchase this game. This review is based on the demo of Samurai Warriors 5 and the gameplay I've seen from others, and I completely understand if you disregard my review based on that. For a variety of reasons, some I've discussed and will discuss, I've decided not to support this game monetarily even for the purposes of reviewing it. 5 is just not the direction I want the Warriors series to continue in. One big reason is the DLC and pricing strategy, which you can find another video about by Profar in the description if you're curious. If you can look past all of that and are still interested in my review, let's begin. As I've already mentioned, 5 is a reboot with a lot of cut characters. There are 39 playable characters in this game, but that number doesn't tell the whole story. Almost every character in this game uses a cloned moveset, and 10 of these characters have no unique charge or unique Musou attacks like the rest of the characters do. Like Spirit of Sanada, this game focuses mostly on a single faction, this time the Oda clan, along with the various adventures of Akechi Mitsuhide. As such, the game only explores about half of the story that we typically get in a Samurai Warriors game. Along with the story changes, 5 got a few gameplay changes. You now get 4 special abilities along with your standard attacks. There's now a lock-on mechanic for fighting enemy officers, and you can now seamlessly combo between hyper attacks and standard attacks. I would say the difficulty is a bit higher than other recent Warriors games as well, thanks to enemy aggression and a bit of a better balancing with hyper attacks and peons. These are all really good additions, and the gameplay of 5 is really fluid and fun to play. It's not a huge leap from previous games, but it's probably the best the combat has ever felt. For characters, there's an RPG-like system and a level-up system too. Also, like in recent Dynasty Warriors games, you can now swap your character's weapon out for another weapon each battle. In terms of the story and new character portrayals, I'm not the biggest fan. 5 takes a lot of liberty with the historical background, and I know some don't mind that, but I tend to prefer that Warriors games try to stick to the history that they're based on. I do like that there are plenty of cutscenes and dialogue within the game to give you more character relationships. The way that they've changed returning characters to the series is just weird. It's nice to see them doing something a little different, but it feels like they went out of their way to make every character more attractive for marketing purposes or something. That's not to say every character got worse, some definitely got better, but it just seemed like a weird change to me. Another thing that was disappointing is that only the two main characters got a younger and older design. In Spirit of Sanada, at least 4 characters got multiple designs based on age. 5 also got one mode aside from story mode, Citadel mode. I didn't play this mode myself, but I heard it isn't that great. From what I understand, the mode is centered around defending a base and increasing a friendship meter with other characters. 5 also got a new art style that's just fine to me. I prefer the visuals of Samurai Warriors 4, but 5 looks pretty good in its own right. Now obviously this wasn't the most comprehensive review. If you're looking for that, I would recommend Lighty the Noob's review on this game, which I'll link in the description. What do I think of 5 though? If you only care about gameplay, I would recommend 5 and say it's pretty good. If you care about the story, characters, movesets, side modes, and more, I would say there's better Samurai Warriors games out there to play. After playing the demo and watching others play through the game, I am still not convinced that buying this game is worth it.